but I think technology is everywhere. But people don't understand technology because not everybody is an IT specialist. But there's, I think, a deeper understanding the average person does need to create and elevate their skill sets around cybersecurity, especially and now AI. Those are like areas where you can't ignore that anymore. We've only deepened our dependence on technology over the last 20 years, and the next 20 will be even a steeper adoption curve of these modern technologies.
Technology has created a paradox. As our capabilities expand exponentially, so too does the surface on which we can be attacked. The managed service industry's explosive growth, approaching $500 billion globally, reflects not just digital adoption, but the mounting complexity of maintaining secure, resilient systems. Cybersecurity threats now evolve faster than most organizations can adapt, with AI-powered attacks emerging alongside AI-powered defenses in an escalating arms race. So what once required really specialized knowledge to create exploits now leverages automated tools that democratize both innovation and destruction. So the challenge isn't just protecting against known threats, but anticipating risks that emerge from technologies that we're still learning to implement. Every advancement in cloud computing, in edge devices, and artificial intelligence introduces new vulnerabilities at the precise moment where we're more dependent on these systems than ever. So today we're speaking with an entrepreneur who has navigated this complex landscape firsthand. It's Barinder Hans, the CEO and co-founder of Rhino Networks, an award-winning managed IT provider, which has been recognized in Canada's top 50 best managed companies and included in the top 501 list of MSPs in North America. He's a UBC Computer Science grad. He co-founded the Vancouver-based firm in 2010, specializing in cybersecurity, cloud solutions, and 24/7 proactive network support for businesses. Barinder, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So that was a very professional introduction for what I would say between us has been a very unprofessional relationship.
Okay.
So, my earliest memories of you were obviously in high school. We've known each other for a very long time. And some of the more memorable moments were, long road trips where we're blaring, Punjabi tunes and highly spiritual Qawwali music and singing it badly at the top of our lungs in your black Honda Civic with the windows rolled down.
Still do it. Different vehicle.
Different vehicle, and perhaps maybe some passengers that don't appreciate it as much as we did back then. But I want to talk a little bit about actually the origins of Red Rhino. Like a really interesting company, and I feel like you've carved a really unique niche in a place that's becoming increasingly noisy or exponentially noisy. How did it all start? And were you a little boy with a dream of being a IT MSP one day?
No, when I was a little boy in high school, I wanted to play video games all the time, and I thought, hey, let's go to video game design school. It's a big thing at the time, and my friend and I, who also wanted to do that, we decided that might be too limiting. So did computer science at UBC instead. But the entire time, no, I had no idea I would ever be a business person. If you talked to me in high school, the idea that I could be an entrepreneur, a business person, I would have laughed at you, let alone my entire class. There's no way that would have ever happened. But when I was going to school at UBC during the summers, I got a job at like a local computer company back in my hometown. And I found it interesting, got really nerdy. Then
got nerdy?
I guess I was always nerdy.
You started off pretty nerdy.
Fair point. I doubled down on the nerdiness.
As did we all.
Yeah. And partway through, I took a year off, still continued to work there. And then when I ultimately graduated from university, like any good university student, I didn't know what I want to do with my life. And the dot-com bubble had burst by this point. So all the jobs we thought were going to be available were no longer available. And I continued to work at that same company for another year. I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the work. I did not like the pay. And then at some point in 2005, I thought, hey, I think I go do this for myself. And this was a year that I was getting married. So I called my fiance. She's in India, all getting ready for wedding shopping and such. I'm like, hey, hon, I think I'm going to quit my job and start this new life as unemployed or partially freelance employed.
And you said this before you guys got married.
Before I gave her a note, I told her
That's
before,
gutsy.
yeah, and she thought she was very lovingly told me that she trusted me, and I'm sure she's sure I know what I'm doing, which was a big mistake because the next 5 years was a whole lot of struggle, and I was one of those trunk slammers who did a lot of IT work. People spread the word that, hey, Barinder's a good computer guy. If you need somebody to help you out. And back then, there was no such thing as a managed IT industry where you're proactive. It's all reactive. Hey, like, hey, my computer's broken. Can you come fix it? I need a new server because the old one's old. Okay, great. We can fix that. And you start off there. And then ultimately, by 2010, after I'd done meandering, playing around with other ideas, going back to school for other random things, I got serious about it. So it took me a long time to get serious.
I was going to say that because, I mean, I knew you during that time. Right?
Yeah.
And even with a computer science degree, never really heard you talk about technology as passionately as you do now. We never really discussed your computer science degree. My memory of you then is you talking about your philosophy courses constantly.
I love philosophy. And that, even when I was doing my computer science degree, I took every philosophy, history course I could get my hands on. They were extremely engaging for me. It's not like I didn't like computer science, but those other courses stimulated my mind, that self-development in a way that the technology side never could.
Yeah. But the connection's not immediate, right? It's like, the network's down, but why?
But why? It did help with the root cause analysis of things. So I did find all that other stuff interesting, but then ultimately settled down with an idea and decided that, hey, over the 5 years where I was trunk slamming, doing my IT work, I learned enough about the business and the industry had transitioned or was transitioning to the managed IT space. And I believed in that. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. And I started believing in myself because, you put one foot in front of the other and you don't know where you're going to end up. I was just putting one foot in front of the other. And my dining table for years was just full of computer parts. Like, we never ate at the dining table because it was the tech bench. And then ultimately, in 2010, I started getting serious. It was solid 4 years before I got my first employee. And even my first employee was not because I grew to a point where all of a sudden I absolutely needed it. It was kind of on the fence. But I, was still friends with my former boss. And he was one of those persons who's like a mentor to me, and probably the second only to my father as the most influential sort of male role model in my life at the time. And I learned a lot from him. And so we always remained friends. And then ultimately he was retiring, and I was able to pick up his book of business as well.
And what year was that?
That would have been 2014. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you had started your company and more as a IT service provider.
Yeah.
And were ticking along for a little while, and then you decided to kind of take over his business as well.
That's right.
Yeah. So I want you to talk about that a little bit because, I've got some inside knowledge there, but it's still fascinating to me, like how all that went down. So you could talk a little bit about, how you guys struck an agreement and what sort of transformed the business after that.
Sure. So I think you're alluding to the fact that our agreement was a handshake agreement. We just trusted each other and just went off that. But I think to truly understand that, I think just to back it up a little bit, I think one thing I was always, even since I was young, I questioned things. I was never like, here, this is the authority, here's the right way to do things, and accepted it. I'm kind of annoying that way, right? As you well know. And so I'd always look to get to the truth of the matter. I want to always understand things as they were, which is a skill set I realize now that you build up over time. It is a continual evaluation of the data set as it is, whether it's, hard data like in business that you can have, or not, or anecdotal data, life data, gut feelings that you have in your personal life. And over years, and I only realize this now, I think I've gotten good at understanding sort of reality as it is and accepting it for what it is. And if we can get good at understanding truth, and it's always a continual learning process. It's not like, we know everything. It's one of those situations where the better you get at it, the more it empowers you to make better decisions in your life, in your business. And so how do you operationalize that internally as a human being? And I think for me, that was always integrity. I know it's like a moral standpoint, but I've always tried to build my life with like high integrity, and because that allows you to be in harmony with that truth of the outside world. And so when I'm high integrity, and this gentleman, my boss at the time, or previously, was high integrity, we started off our conversation like, hey, this is 10 bullet points of what's important to us. We can make this work. Then he goes away and talks to a lawyer because he's a smarter business person. He's been around the block, and his lawyer comes back with a whole bunch of bullet points and things to fix. Then I'm like, oh crap, I got to go talk to a lawyer. And I send it to a lawyer who's a friend, and she comes back with a bunch of bullet points. And we go back and forth twice, and then we're like, this is a dumb idea. This is not what we were thinking of. Like, can we go back to the original 10 bullet points we had, shake hands, move on? And it was a good deal for both of us. But we could only do that because we both trusted each other. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, when I reflect on my life, everything good in my life has come because of that high integrity, whether it's that life-changing moment in my business, and it truly was. Like, the before and after that transaction is wildly different for my life. But the people in my life, my friends, my wife, like, it just, everything is there. I mean, as you know, like, I live a no drama kind of life. Like, I don't have people in my life that create drama. And
I'm the drama in your life.
And if that's the worst of it, I mean, I'll take that, right? Any day. There's a certain amount of authenticity, and I think those good things really help empower us to focus on things like business, because I don't have all this baggage that pulls me down. Mm-hmm. Right? So that transaction then let me have employee number one, office space, very quickly employee number two, and then it's been not smooth sailing, but sky's the limit.
Yeah, I wonder which came first, because I guess interested in school how attracted you were to philosophy as a subject matter. So I do wonder a little bit of like what came first in. Was it the attraction to the Stoics that came first, or was it actually reading so much material in philosophy that you said, actually, here's an interesting way of conducting relationships and living life?
I think they're mutually reinforcing, right? You're at that age when you're 18, 20 years old, you're just trying to understand the world and leaving home for the first time, that you have to absorb all this material, right? And make sense of the world and become an adult in some shape or form. And I think they just mutually reinforce each other.
Yeah, no, and the reason I asked that is I'm seeing some really interesting parallels here, because you have something in common with the co-founder and CEO of Bubble, the no-code platform. Mm-hmm. So Josh Haas, we had a chance to chat with him at Web Summit. Recorded a little segment with him as well. And similar to you, like, his first passion was actually philosophy. And,
nice.
And technology came later.
I like him already.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Yeah.
But much like what you're talking about, what I saw in that conversation was he had a real appreciation for like simple truths, mm-hmm. right? And just building on really, really simple truths. And that's also why he was quite far ahead of, the industry. Like, now we look around and like automation, no code tools, it just seems so obvious. He started on that path in 2012, mm-hmm. right? And again, it was no like bullshit pitch decks and like, big VC money or whatever. They just said, hey, simple truth. We think this is where things are headed. This is only going to increase. Mm-hmm. Can we build something meaningful? Yes. They bootstrapped for a number of years, and just like inch by inch, just built a solid thing moving forward. Yeah. Until it became valuable enough that it's a huge company.
And that totally makes sense, because truth is like a river, and we're the rafts on that river. You can fight against it, you can row against it, and it's with anything in our lives, right? But if you can find a way to move with harmony, with that truth, and understanding of reality as it is, you're gonna be far more successful, right?
So what are the simple truths that you're working with today?
Well, for us, for business, we always invested in people. Like, I think people are critical. Like, I've always tried to make a place of work where people will want to stay forever. And sometimes it's not going to be true for them, and that's okay if they move on. But I really want to create a place of work that's high empathy, respect every individual, junior, senior, doesn't matter. Everybody comes in day one. If they have ideas, we're happy to hear them.
That idea seems almost quaint, though, in the current context, right? Because I mean, the idea of lifers is almost disparaged a bit these days.
Right? Yeah, and it boggles my mind when I'm on like Reddit and see these career advice threads be like, hey, you should never stay at a job more than 2 years. Sure. But when I see a resume that's a job hopper, last jobs, 7 jobs or a year and a half, that person is not getting reviewed because I'm of a different opinion. I think it's important to support people, try to create opportunities for people to stay there for life. And if they don't, that's okay. But I want to create that opportunity. And those are the people that get rewarded, I think, in the long term. At some point, you have to settle down and say, hey, what is my passion? What is the company that's going to help me create the things that I want to create? And you can't do that in a 1.5 year, like sometimes, but most of the time not. You can't create that in a 1.5 year timeline, right? So what are you truly investing in as an employee, as a creator, right?
Yeah, there's real clarity to that, actually. And I imagine, with all of the career advice out there about what you're supposed to be doing and leveraging one offer to get another, like how much depth do you actually build, right? Have you ever experienced what it means to have like a deep and trusting relationship?
Yeah.
Like the one that you had with your former boss?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you have that trust, those people will show up and support you, right? Later in life. I mean, I was talking to a business owner down in, he runs a much bigger MSP, cybersecurity focused in Silicon Valley. And because of the people that he cares about, he really wants his employees who have helped him build his company succeed in life. So he's turning it into an employee-owned company. Instead of just selling it to PE firms, and his firm is massive, which people would line up to buy from him, he's actually ESOP, right? So which allows him to turn it into an employee-owned organization and let them buy that organization from him. Great. He still gets his money, but he's now giving it to his employees who have helped build the company and can continue to run it. His clients are served. And I think there's not every business owner is like that, but I think the good ones will always think of their employees as well, not just shareholders.
So investing into the people and actually creating opportunities for them to stay for life, like that's one simple truth. What else are you looking at?
I think you have to also build systems. Yeah, I've always focused on trying to not depend on have good individuals, smart individuals, but build the systems and scaffolding that allows a business to succeed. You have to have fundamental business processes that are core to what you do. Right? So we do IT, right? And we make sure that our processes to execute the various elements of technology, of IT, are well documented. We're very heavy on documentation, have been for almost our entire inception, right? Since I had an employee, we've always focused on building processes. And I think that's critical because I take on, it's unfortunate, but also not surprising because it takes effort to build a culture of documentation of SOPs, standard operating procedures. We have hundreds of documents in our documentation portal. You can improve upon the document, and it's always ever changing. We will blow up everything every 3 months if we need to. But like we'll take on a client, like an example is client user onboardings. It's something you do in every business all the time. IT departments get it wrong all the time. And we'll take on a client and they will screw up onboarding. For example, one we took on last year, they would onboard new employees, but still give them permissions to, the owners had this one folder where all the sensitive data went, the two owners, the partners. This one folder somehow always got assigned permissions to every new employee. Like that's the one folder you're not supposed to be doing. So build the process, right? And then
sensitive data. Let's get the interns in there first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's frustrating for those business people because that distracts them from the work they're supposed to be doing. If you do your job right in IT, and most of it can be systematized, right? Focus on process. It actually empowers your people to do their best work because they don't have to worry about the simple things. Some of our processes get really complex. We have some processes that are 3 pages long, and for setting up a new firewall, for example, and there's details you could forget. and also allows us to train new people as well. If our processes are better built, we can hand that over to a new person. And so we actually pride ourselves on being able to like bring in new people, young grads, and then train them up. And we could only do that because of those processes, right? It's a real leverage. And then you think about the future now with automation and AI, we can only take those processes and automate them because they're well documented, right? The better they're documented, the better you worked out the kinks already, then you can take them to automation. And we're doing a lot of that internally as well.
So I'm going to share a quote with you. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but it's Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
Obviously, legendary music producer and like a savant in music taste and understanding, what's going to be a hit or not. But he had this great sort of take on AI and what's going on right now. And he basically took it back to music and said there was a time when the average person actually couldn't get involved in music, because to ever be able to express yourself musically, you had to have had training from the right masters. You had to have maybe even like gone to a conservatory for years. And then eventually you may or may not be selected and kind of tapped to be one of the special ones to join a symphony. And now you get to perform and you get to express your art. And you fast forward to kind of like the punk rock era where, you need to know 3 chords, and pretty much anybody can learn 3 chords. Mm-hmm. And the next day you could be on stage somewhere screaming your guts out, but you're expressing yourself. And so he said, we're kind of in that era right now where vibe coding is 3-chord punk rock. And that makes it amazing and awesome because everybody's out there expressing themselves, and there's a whole explosion of these applications that are getting developed. But it seems kind of counter to what you're describing of, methodical, systematic, process-oriented, thoughtful. I enjoy vibe coding. I feel like, I'm in my early days of being a little, script hacker on the internet in my 20s, because I'm able to have an idea, rapidly spin something up and show it to people, right? Yeah. It's so liberating in a way.
Yeah.
So how do you square the fact that technology is blowing up and in some ways democratizing and empowering masses of people all over again, mm-hmm. right? Kind of the same way we were all empowered when the internet first came up, and you could have a quote unquote website, next to Ford Motor Company or anybody else. And it was kind of this even footing for a while. So how do you kind of balance the fact that you've got this real systematic process-oriented approach to technology, but the industry and the culture around it is kind of exploding into this like just kaleidoscope of randomness?
Yeah, I think what we do, was analogous to coding. It is a little bit different in some ways because it's outcomes for business, right? And you always have to have a predictable outcome for business. But as far as like vibe coding, I think there's room for both. There's room for both, jazz and classic music. There's room for punk rock. Like there's room for all of it. And same with coding. You need to have, strong, accurate systems of record, plus also maybe some lean new applications that maybe don't need that same severe level of cybersecurity, right? Like if you're coding and you're putting AI into kids' teddy bears so they can talk to them and have intelligent conversations, great. Now, does that need to have like that same level of systemic coding like a NASA engineer would? You have to have room for both, right? It all depends on what your business outcome is, what are you trying to create, right? And so I don't think those two things are at odds. For us, as long as, if we think about AI and we think about systems, there's some systems that must be precise and accurate. If I'm sending somebody an invoice, 99% of the time it has to be accurate. But if I'm generating marketing content, yes, it can have room for error, right? And I think that's where generative AI actually excels, when there's room for error, because built into the system, it's a prediction machine. It will have, because of its nature, error. And so it's functional and good in some areas, but it's not going to solve all the problems where you need precision and accuracy. Assigning permissions to users of what they're allowed to have and not have is not something that can be imprecise. It has to be accurate, right? And precise every single time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't think those two things are at odds. You just have to understand what's a right tool for the job.
Mm-hmm. What do you think people are still getting wrong about technology and infrastructure?
I think there's still not enough, as the average business owner that I meet, there's still not enough investment and understanding of technology. I think, and it's fair because if you're,
But isn't technology everywhere? Like
it is everywhere, but I feel like, and I get it, they have a different business that's their focus, that they're they're a lawyer, they're an accountant, they're an architect, whatever they're doing, that's their core focus, their skill set. So they focus on that. But I think technology is everywhere, but people don't understand technology because not everybody's an IT specialist. But there's, I think, a deeper understanding the average person does need to create and elevate their skill sets around cybersecurity, especially and now AI. Those are like areas where you can't ignore that anymore. We've only deepened our dependence on technology over the last 20 years, and the next 20 will be even a steeper adoption curve of these modern technologies. And so as a business leader, as a father, I have to, for my kids, I have to make sure that they understand technology in a deep way, and business leaders need to understand technology in a deep way, because in the future, everything is going to be a tech company that just happens to have a different product depending on a specialized skill set. And we have to navigate that world with a lot of education and yeah, just depth of understanding, right?
But what's the biggest thing that you think small medium enterprise is missing? Like, what's the scariest thing out there right now?
So cybersecurity is obviously still the scariest, right? So AI is fun and positive and great. I love it, but cybersecurity is definitely by far the scariest. It'll take down a business. Like if you get ransomware, like there's a great percentage of businesses that never recover because somebody says they've got backups. Their previous IT person or their internal IT person, yeah, they've got backups. They would pretend it's running, but many times they don't test those backups. Is it actually going to recover when a disaster hits? What's their business continuity plan? And these days, these risks are only getting greater and greater.
So that's the arms race I was talking about in the intro. It's because there's the universe always works to balance itself, right? So we have an explosion of the positive side of tech, but similarly, the level of attack sophistication is also increasing. And earlier, you were mentioning like ransomware as a service.
Yeah.
Like if you're a bad actor, you can.
Yeah, if you're a malicious actor, you're sitting in North Korea or wherever you want in the world where you're less likely to get prosecuted, you can just subscribe to ransomware as a service, and it doesn't take a lot of depth of skill sets. In the old days, it's not like the current nation state actors where you have to have deep level of knowledge to execute these malicious attacks. You can just subscribe to ransomware as a service, as you might subscribe to a Salesforce, and be like, all right, I'm going to deploy this, buy this botnet, group, go here, deploy, done, right? And you just buy these services on the dark web, right? And
we're gonna put a how-to guide in the notes.
Yeah, let's not do that. Show notes are gonna be epic. The risk of prosecution is low. The risk of getting caught is low. The rewards are high, and they share the profits with the big organization. I mean, ransomware and these malicious fraudulent phishing activities and such, they're worth billions and billions of dollars. They're not small organizations that run them. They're giant cartels, right? It's like there's a lot of money to be made, and so they're not small organizations anymore, and they're also not always targeting. Like we hear about the targeted items in the news often, but the small businesses are actually the ones at more risk because they often don't have the capabilities to prevent these attacks. They often don't have the ability to recover. They don't have the deep pockets to pay out any fines, and when they do get hit, oftentimes the cost is enough to take down the business, right? I mean, I talked to some of my friends in the States. It's like doctors who are obliged to follow HIPAA and other regulations, but if there's a data breach, some of them are like, hey, I'm at the tail end of my career. I'm just going to shut down early. It's not worth it to go through this cost. Let's just close up shop. And so you see this trend of risk only increasing now with AI-based threats. It's getting easier and easier. The fact that somebody call into my office, mimic my voice because I recorded a podcast, and say, hey, can you reset my password for me? I got a new phone number, right? If you're a small company like ours, they're going to be like, this is off. This Barinder wouldn't do this. But if you're a company of 1,000 people or 10,000 people, how hard is it to get through? I mean, that's what happened. Similar to that with the MGM hack. They just called into the IT department, right?
Really?
It's a little bit more complex, but it's like, hey, can you? I'm locked out, or can you do a password reset? And it wasn't even AI based or anything like that. But there's social engineering will get you pretty far, right? And so risk is of getting caught is low. It's easy to do. They just carpet bomb all the businesses. So as a small business, you have to have your fundamentals in place. So as an IT professional, I get really frustrated seeing all these IT teams not take care of the fundamentals, right? In the old days, when everything was in the what's called the break-fix model in our world, it's like something's broken, come fix it. It's transactional world, and there's still some businesses that still live in that world where their IT people are transactional.
You wait for it to go down. You wait for something to fail.
Right, that's right, and that works for cars, but it doesn't work for technology anymore, where we need uptime. Like when I talk to clients, I tell them that the two biggest deliverables I have for them are productivity. Make sure people are able to work and function and improve their performance, and then risk mitigation, right? And so it frustrates me when I go to take on clients or talk to other IT people, because I'm involved in the larger MSP community. It's like you can't run IT without taking care of your fundamentals of cybersecurity first, right? And it's not even that expensive, but you have to do it right. And I think that's what sets us apart, is like we have this culture of do it right. And that sounds cliched, and everybody will say it, but how do you show up in those processes that I alluded to earlier? We have a 200-point checklist in one area, 300-point checklist in another area, that we make sure our clients are aligned to those best practices. Does every IT company have that? No, I don't think so. Like some do, right? And it's unfortunate because the knowledge is available. It's not hard to get. And if we do those, you're protected from a lot of low-hanging fruit. If somebody wants to target you as a nation-state actor, a 3-letter agency, you're not going to stop them. But the average business is not worried about that. And so you should be able to take care of your fundamentals in a way that really reduces your risk.
I'm going to be peppering this conversation with lots of personal commentary.
Sure.
Because it strikes me every time I hear you talk of just how well suited your personality is to the work that you do, because everything that you just outlined is a fantastic approach to IT and technology and infrastructure. But these are the same things that make you really boring on vacation, because I've been on vacation with you, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to go into the risky districts, right? You're worried about getting mugged.
Yeah.
You're worried about physical safety, and that creates a boring trip.
You know what? Sometimes I am. It's a risk reward, right? So I'll jump out of a plane and go skydiving, but I will double check and make sure I'm clipped in, right? And so, I'm okay with risk, but it has to be a risk that is understood, and it can't be vague. It can't be something we don't know. What the true risk to our organization or to our personal physical well-being is, right?
So, I mean, that's the bad actor side of the world, right? And I think that's maybe a little bit better understood, because we can say we've heard about breaches. We know that hackers exist. Ever since the movies in the late 80s onwards, we know that people are able to use technology in malicious ways. But the other thing that I think has sprung into popular imagination a little bit more is just the understanding of how much of our world that we live and interact with on a daily basis is kind of like this weird, like Scotch taped together house of cards. It was apparent when the CrowdStrike failure happened. That somehow a little bit of bad code can get pushed, and in the end, I think it was just human oversight that caused massive failures worldwide. Hadn't even heard of that company before, because I'm not from that space, but suddenly they're thrust into the imagination because you realize that there's large like refrigeration units and airplanes and all sorts of things that implement their tools that are now just failing everywhere. And then the other place was actually with the American government and DOGE, right? Of them, to some extent running roughshod through the various agencies and bureaucratic departments, but at the same time also getting to look in and say, wow, they're running Fortran, they're running COBOL, they're running these 50, 60-year-old languages. And those systems are processing, not just some little, sort of esoteric department there that doesn't interact with anything, but actually tens of and hundreds of millions of files for citizens, right? These are the systems, and all of them. It's not even to say that they're vulnerable. It's like they're just so archaic and so brittle.
Yeah.
And that's what the world is sort of built on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's the other example I would share with you, just from physical world, is during COVID was global supply chains. Like, you realize very quickly that the food that you depend on can get shut down very fast if your delivery services can't get to where you need to go. We had a flood in our community, and one side of the highway was blocked for a couple of days. Well, if a different part of the highway got blocked for a different reason, well, that community would be isolated and not able to get food in or out. How many days of food do you keep in your fridge? Like, there's a lot of these resilience conversations we have to have as families, as businesses, as governments, because I think that was a big wake up call from COVID as well. Is that how do we build a more resilient country? Right. And I think it's good to have those conversations. But with technology, I think I don't know how we roll it back. We're already very dependent on the big technology providers, the Google, the Microsoft, the Facebook. Is, I think you can live without your Facebook and Instagram, but they're as we move into AI, our big businesses are going to become even more reliant on AI. And so, I don't think there's a way to turn that back. That dependency is going to be there. And then you rely on those big businesses to make sure that they are resilient. One example that I can share, though, is that you have to assume, just like in cybersecurity, you assume zero trust. You have to assume that your technology will fail if you're going to plan for a resilient system. Mm-hmm. So I was at a hotel. The Omni Hotel had a breach a year ago, 2 years ago. And I'm checking in. I'm like, and I'm learning this as I'm flying in. I'm like, oh no, how are they going to check us in? What hotel room are we in? Who knows, right? But they had a process. They knew what they were going to do. They put, they had paper printouts of where every person was booked, whatever room. They put a human being, because of the cards wouldn't work, of course. So they put a human being on every floor with the sheet, like, oh, Barinder, let me walk you to your room and buzz you in. Every time, 24/7, there's a person on your floor who's going to walk you to your room, and you show them your ID and let you into your room. And so they had a process for that. So you have to build a system, a company that is resilient against a technology failure.
Yeah, that's impressive. I remember this anecdote that was shared like years ago, and it was about the early days of Amazon Web Services. And again, the simple truths, right? The approach that they took to their infrastructure early on was the assumption of failure. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that, as much as that might be a principle, there wasn't necessarily as much appreciation for that. Mm-hmm. And you could see that be in the expense of a lot of, commercial, sort of professional grade, business hardware and software, right? Yeah. Whether it was like back then hard drives or what have you, the assumption was you pay these premium rates because they'll have a higher uptime and they'll break, but it'll be a long time before they break, right? Yeah. And I think it was before it was AWS, they basically had created an internal infrastructure where they assumed failure. Yeah. And to such an extent that they would only buy consumer grade hardware, and they would attach it to these server racks, but they would like Velcro and like just kind of, like tie things in place because the assumption was this thing's going to break and we're just going to rip it out and replace it. Yeah. But then they created underlying software that would allow for load balancing and would allow for distribution of all that compute across hardware that's failing all the time, right? Yeah. But it was such a different perspective. Yeah. And this whole era of cloud computing in AWS is kind of born out of that, right? Yeah. The assumption that it's going to fail. Yeah. And because you assume it's going to fail, you have systems that are constantly resilient and redundant. Yeah. And then the experience is that you never actually have failure.
And as a systems guy in me is like, I hear those stories and I love hearing that because that's just such intelligent design. And I mean, that's how the internet was born, is how do we create a resilient communication system in case, war breaks out between Russia and the US, how are we going to be able to communicate, right? And Netflix has taken that to another extreme where they have their chaos monkey go in and intentionally take down servers, intentionally take down entire data centers and ensure that Netflix can still function and perform.
So what's the chaos monkey?
The chaos monkey will literally take down servers,
Yeah,
right?
but what
And break things.
But what is the
It's
chaos?
code.
Oh, it's code. Okay.
It's code. It's code that will intentionally. I'm assuming it's maybe more than code,
Yeah.
and they've gone up to like Chaos Ape and Chaos Kong and things like that, where they'll take out full data centers, full regions, right, to see how they can still function. But they've built resiliency into the ecosystem, right? And I love hearing those stories because that's how we have to think about our businesses, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really intentional approach to chaos.
Yeah,
right?
intentional. Well, and if you assume intentionality, or if you work with intentionality, hopefully you cover enough cases that the unintentional stuff that shows up, you're protected against it, right?
So what's next? What's happening in the world? What are you excited about? What are you worried about?
So the excited and worry is probably both AI. I'll be honest. I'm very excited about AI because, yes, we've sold cybersecurity for the last 5 or 10 years, and we'll continue to sell it. It's great. We're good at it. It can make some money. But if you go talk to a business owner, if I go talk to Mo, the business owner, like, hey, we're going to sell you something and it's going to protect you against negative things that can happen. Great. You need it as a business owner. I need to invest in it, but it's not creating business value for me. It's protecting against risk.
It's insurance. Yeah.
It's insurance. And AI is one of those things where I can actually create business value. I can actually make my marketing manager, 5x more effective by the use of AI. I can have my coders be, I don't know how many orders of magnitude more effective with the use of AI. That is exciting. That is creating business value. I can go tie in to databases and business intelligence and say, hey, we're going to give management and leadership and the board Power BI reports that are going to be able to tie your disparate systems together. You have data here, data there. Let's actually pull that data into something reasonable that an organization can look at. So those types of opportunity is super exciting. And we can do that consulting and try to provide that to our clients. But at the same time, I mean, you have like the leader of Anthropic, the CEO, come out in a recent interview and talk about how there's going to be a white collar bloodbath for jobs, where he thinks in the next 1 to 5 years, something like 15% of white collar entry level jobs, people would be unemployed. That's a massive impact to our economy, to people's well-being. How do people get their start? We're thinking about how to bring AI into our system and use it more, especially for frontline. Frontline tech is going to be the first place that's going to be, impacted by it. In addition to coding, of course. Microsoft just laid off 6,000 people in a restructuring. Every organization is doing this. So what does this mean for our society? And I think that's a negative side that nobody is talking about. In addition to all the cybersecurity concerns about AI, I mean, don't go upload all your sensitive private information into ChatGPT. I mean, that would be a bad day. But why is government not talking about it, other than Anthropic, which is one of the more progressive, ethics-based AI organizations? Why are not the other AI organizations not talking about these things, right? I think he suggested that there might be a transaction tax you could use to help those displaced workers. Great idea. Let's have those conversations as a society, because 5 years is not that long. And we're seeing the impact now for the public. And I mean, in typical government fashion, government will wait until the 11th hour to do something about it, and it'll be too late. But if we could get ahead of it, we can help those people, right? AI doesn't have to be something that costs a whole bunch of people jobs in order to have the billionaires become trillionaires. We can design it in a way that it does serve everybody, still allow business to succeed, but without the expense of the public. So those are the big things that are exciting to me. I love talking about AI. I love bringing it in. I don't think we should stop doing it. It is a tool, and it's a powerful tool in our toolkit.
Yeah. I've got to share this anecdote, though, because it's just, I'm a bit of a techno-optimist, I think. Have some concern, obviously, about, the social and ethical implications of every advancement, because, they amplify everything, right? The good and the bad. But just the degree of vulnerability and the degree of risk, I don't think is fully understood. Like, I'm not going to share names, obviously, but discussions with, some senior members of a fairly large law firm recently, that had a lot of just sort of like dark AI usage internally, because the level of appreciation was that if you log on and upload all of these sensitive documents, get AI, a variety of AIs to process them, that if you then, when you're done, if you log out and clear your browser history, that's safe.
Sure.
And this was like a rumor that had spread throughout this company. And we're talking about like 100 employees minimum, where it was just understood that like, okay, SOPs, it had almost become like an informal SOP that like we're all gonna upload this stuff just wildly to like random services. But clear your browser history after you're done, because we got to be cyber secure.
It does not surprise me. I mean, and because people don't fundamentally understand how AI works, right? And also people think that AI is always right. It isn't, right? We know that it isn't, right? It just by design, it can't be always right. But yeah, I think this goes back to my earlier point of, in the future, even now, the more tech savvy those business leaders can be, the better their departments, their businesses will be served. Everybody needs to have a deeper understanding. But I mean, I'm still having conversations about password management, that every password needs to be unique and strong. And how do you do that? You got to have a password manager. I can't remember 100 different passwords, right? Every password has to be unique, strong, minimum 12 or 14 characters. Who does that? I mean, everybody still puts a 0 or 1 exclamation mark at the end and think it's unique. Like, no. When those passwords are breached, because, various organizations will have data breaches, you don't even have to do anything wrong. It's going to be on the dark web. And they'll see the pattern that you like putting zeros and exclamation marks at the end, and they'll try it across all your services. And lo and behold, they're into your sensitive Microsoft or Facebook or whatever accounts you've got. And so I think we're always fighting that battle for education and training, and businesses know that. But I think it's a hard one to teach for people who don't want to honestly learn that.
So what's next for Red Rhino?
Well, for us, I'm just grateful. We're in a good place. We're having fun. We're investing more in AI and automation. I mean, automation often doesn't get the same buzz as AI. Automation, I think, is in some ways more powerful, depending on what you're trying to have as an outcome.
And a lot of what's actually automation is being called AI.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of what it's automation is actually called AI, because it just gets lumped into it. And AI may be actually more powerful in the long term. But if you want precise results, precise data, automation is extremely powerful. We have, in addition to traditional automation, which is full code, you have low code, no code options now that can really leverage and unlock a lot of potential in organizations. And so we're investing a lot into that for our business, but as well as our clients, to take that knowledge to them, because it can help them. Other than that, we're growing. I mean, like you mentioned at the beginning, we've been recognized as a good, strong Canadian MSP. We have a vision of where we're trying to go and help small business excel and unlock their full potential. And I think doing it in the midst of the AI revolution is about as exciting as it gets.
So if somebody wanted to learn more about you, learn more about Red Rhino Networks, where should they go?
Hit our website, give us a call. You can email me. It's just my first name at redrhinonetworks.com. Email me anytime, and we'll help you out.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Barinder.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, hopefully we've given you a lot to think about. That was High Agency. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.